analysis.
Nick, I decided we toured this with Tracy not here. I can always let her watch the tape.
That's fine. And, it talked about the, what Fairhaven is, the methodology, the land covers with respect to, urban versus, forested area. You could see where Fairhaven Fields is versus where, everything else is considered urban residential development. And, they broke it out with the various different, watersheds. We're all part of the Navesink watershed. There's a small area by the bird sanctuary, which goes to the Shrewsbury River. It goes into Little Silver. It talks about the different uses and the percentage of uses. But they I can share this with you as well. It goes into the various different small projects that residential neighborhoods or like rain gardens and, cisterns that can be used for residential purposes. This is all before the green infrastructure stormwater came into play. And then they took a look at Fairhaven in its entirety, and they took a look at possible project sites in our downtown area and around town. So they identified like the Acme, the Boynton Insurance Company, the different churches in town. And then they took each of those individual sites, and they broke it down into further, concept plans of what could be done and the potential for improving the water quality, infiltration into the ground and the different types of systems. So, for example, for the Acme, they looked at the entire site. It's about 1 acre, or so of site, and they realized that the section that's against Cedar Avenue, where the martial arts program has some green area that would have been a good spot for a rain garden or whatever. And they kind of broke it out by the areas, kind of took a look at various different possibilities. Again, obviously Acme came in and did a redevelopment, and we really didn't have an opportunity to implement some of these programs. But it's something to look forward or to use as a guiding document moving forward. This is where they were anticipating roof drains going into a rain garden onto the Cedar Ave side. Boynton is for sale, and there's a lot of, from the zoning perspective, I see a lot of stuff ahead of time. And generally speaking, there is interest in that being a school or a mixed use development. The latest I heard is basically it's just going to be a different type of offices. So, medical offices or just regular offices. So that might be going to the planning board. So if it goes to the planning board, they could, they have an opportunity to look at the site plan and maybe implement some of these types of, conceptual recommendations that to reduce their impervious coverage and also kind of increase our water quality that goes to the Navesink.
Nick,
Yep.
Sorry to stop you on Boynton just because it's important information. In that scenario where they're building different offices, are they building or they're just converting the existing building into a new use?
Well, nothing has been submitted yet. This is just real estate or developers inquiring on different possibilities.
Okay, but you haven't heard of someone purchased that lot and this is what they expect to do with it?
No, it's all just, it's all just due diligence work. And, obviously it's also in the COA overlay zone. So, there's implications with regard to that as well.
Right. Okay.
But anything that comes in would have to go to the planning board and be reviewed in its entirety. And obviously stormwater is an important aspect of site considerations.
I think asking because I'm sure Mike and I would field questions on anything, in that overlay zone and what's anticipated to be built there. So it was just more curiosity's sake than anything. So I'm sorry to stop your presentation. Continue.
Yeah, no, that's not really a presentation here. It's just kind of giving you some additional background. I know you guys weren't necessarily involved with the mayor and council at that point in time. So I just want to let you know we have some of this historical research and historical stuff when it comes to environmental and stormwater stuff that we use internally, as well as providing guidance for our different professionals as they come to different boards or different parts of the development process. I know the Environmental Commission has kind of taken some of these programs and gone to or tried to implement some of them. So like at Knollwood School, they did the rain garden. They were looking at the Church of Nativity to do some stuff. And again, there's some hurdles because obviously the Church of Nativity is on a county road, and they have to deal with, where that discharge point is and decreasing it. But from a master plan or from a 10,000 elevation view, it provides some conceptually some recommendations. Like the Fairhaven Animal Hospital has just recently sold, and I'm not sure if it's going to remain a veterinarian place or not. But in theory, if a zoning permit comes in, or if it has to go to the planning board, it could be this type of information could be used to help not only make sure that the development meets our current green infrastructure and stormwater rules, but also gives the applicant a sense of what the possibilities are. So they could, take a look at taking some of this, the roof drainage associated with the actual building, connecting it to these downspouts, and then discharging into a bioretention and rain garden, kind of along the Gillespie side of the property. At that time too, Rutgers took a look at the police department and was looking at that project site with regard to what the existing impervious coverage was. This was before any proposed development or redevelopment of the site was anticipated. They were just looking at, trying to help mitigate some of the existing loads. And at that time, they were looking at the parking areas. They were looking at pervious pavement in this orange area. They were looking at this entire big parking lot area, what they could do with that. They talked about taking part of the existing roof and discharging it to a rain garden in the grass area. All kind of common sense, approaches. We have the volunteer fire department. That's another
Nick,
site that
can I jump in on the police department? We're doing permeable pavement, right? Do you know?
I'm not sure of the latest iteration. I know that was discussed at some point. I don't know if that's as part of the
To the best of my knowledge, Mike, yes. We can confirm that, but my memory serves me correctly. The answer to that is yes.
Okay, thanks.
And can I jump in with a question too? That veterinary hospital, you said that's sold. Teresa, is that the place that just had a formal complaint made of it?
No, this is the animal hospital that's on Grange was the one that had the parking complaint.
Got it.
Associated with the owners or the people parking there, or the workers or what have you.
Different situation. Got it. Thank you.
Different area. Yep, different area. And again, I can email this to you guys. You can look at it in more detail. But again, the whole point of this was that Rutgers was trying to help us out and look at various sites in town. Sites that might be under possible development or redevelopment, and kind of help us identify either, from a planning board standpoint or from a borough standpoint, potential areas where we could decrease our impervious, coverage and have a small impact. And some of it was implemented, like the Knollwood School one, prior to this, they didn't have the rain garden, and the Environmental Commission and Brian Rice worked to get that installed along Hance there. And again, this just kind of goes through all the different areas and talks about the possibilities of in general, if you combined all those different sites, they amount to almost 25 acres of impervious coverage that went to the watershed. And they talked about the different, the loading, so the TSS or the turbidity or different values that they measure stormwater for, and what would happen during a 1.5, 1.25, rainfall, is what they call the water quality storm, how much that would generate in the sense of volume and associated annually, you know, how much water that, you know, actually goes to the Navesink River. And you know, it's the idea of a domino effect. Every little small domino has a bigger impact down the road. And then they analyzed if you took those different recommendations for each one of those sites, either pervious pavement or bioretention systems, and you kind of aggregated all that stuff, you know, what the overall impact would be to the Navesink. So, you know, I could say that one or two of those things that they recommended were implemented, and we're continuing to, you know, move forward on some of that as well. So it's just I thought I'd share that with you, just since you guys are may have not had a chance to see this stuff ahead of time.
What, Nick, when was that actually put together? What year was that?
2016.
2016.
Right.
And
So,
is there any thought or mechanism to them updating the parts that need to be updated, or not really?
no, they basically had the grants, and they kind of spread the wealth around the state of New Jersey. So that was like a one-shot deal for us. I'm sure that we can kind of internally kind of maybe update some of those things, but you know, generally speaking, it was just kind of a guiding document to help us understand how decreasing the impervious coverage for Fairhaven is important, and how it would impact the overall health of the Navesink. And, you know, off of that project that we did the impervious coverage, we also did this, the Normandy review, or the Normandy Avenue concept plan, where we still didn't have, at that point in time, it was 2017, that we still didn't have, or we're just about getting ready to take over that property. And they came down, we gave them some surveys that we had from the property, and we were kicking around some different conceptual plans for the park. At that point in time, we had talked about having parking associated with it, as well as having, you know, a path, and then also this kind of giant rain garden at the bottom of the Normandy. Now, obviously, we did do some of this. We had the path, and we had the benches that were put into the park, and we were doing some slope stability associated with the you know, the coastal bluff there. But one of the things that, from a stormwater impact, which Rutgers was helping us with, we were just kind of looking at a giant rain garden. There's no actual stormwater infrastructure in the Normandy. There's no pipes or outfalls. Everything is sheet flow or gutter flow associated with it. So what we were looking at that point in time was this rain garden design, where we would attenuate the velocity of the stormwater coming down. And, you know, either, again, it's a dead end, so we would have some type of a timber tie or a guide rail type system to prevent cars or whatever, but still provide access for kayaking or access to the beach. But we would plant it with you know, natural or you know, vegetation, and it would have this a designed rain garden where you would have it would be excavated. You would put a special media layer that's like 12 inches down to help infiltration, and also to, you know, collect any of the stormwater, the floatables or the pollutants, the silt that would run down. So this was kind of what they came up with. We never implemented it, but it's something that we have in our back pocket, and we can either utilize or kind of redesign or kind of adapt as needed in the future.
And not to interrupt, Nick, but, you know, don't forget, we a lot of this was on hold based on our, you know, settlement with the Yacht Works. And then
Right.
we also didn't want to move too quickly with the living shoreline, because knowing that, as Rich pointed out the last time we spoke, if all that rainwater is careening down there and we don't have any way to stop it, having it wash away some of what we did in that beach is a real concern. So there's some thought that some of these things have to be looked at holistically as opposed to individually.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. And again, what we were able to demolish the existing house that was there. We put in, you know, we did the paths and stuff, and we're continuously moving to maintain and increase the the sensitivity of that pocket park in town, and it's getting used. It's utilized a lot, and we're looking forward to doing more stuff in the future there.
It would probably make a very good Monmouth County Open Space Grant application in the future.
Just as another example, or as a comparison, at the end of Baton Road, obviously we have plans to do additional work at the end of Baton Road as part of the boat ramp improvements. But right now, what we have there is a kind of a bioretention swale. We have a kiosk that's set up with some garbage cans, and we have riprap, and there's some flowers associated with the kiosk. But generally, what happens is there's no infrastructure outfall at that as well. So everything that gets collected on Holly and Baton Road just runs down Baton Road and goes right into the water. So I guess before my time, they put in this swale. It's a form of a rain garden, but this one is just kind of a rock swale with some grasses in it. So after, obviously, you have to do maintenance on it, and the DPW guys this current spring dug everything out and took out all the garbage and the siltation, and then reestablished the stone base and the riprap. And that what that does is it helps for erosion purposes. It doesn't, all the water that's washing down kind of has a chance, the energy is dissipated and has a chance to infiltrate. And then during very heavy storms or hurricanes or things like that, it just kind of flows into Fourth Creek or into the Navasink, but it doesn't wash out or scour anything. So the DPWs kind of did this, it's the same concept, kind of on a smaller scale that we were talking about for De Normandy, where the water, instead of just rushing down to the beach, there would be an opportunity for it to kind of energy dissipated. It would have a chance to infiltrate, and it would get rid of all the siltation and the first flush, what they usually call the first flush of contaminants and what have you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Before we continue? Thank you. To Teresa's point about, there's maybe think about it as multiple parts. Nick, what would be step 1, 2, so on? I mean, I get the point. I think like the rain garden would need to go in before you do the living shoreline, for example. Can you expand on the steps as you see it?
There's a lot of moving parts. Obviously the waterfront parks that are on Grange and Hance and Batten are kind of already, we've taken that pretty far. To kind of jump onto, the living shoreline as well.
Well, whether it happens right now, I just mean from a sensible installation plan, not necessarily for immediate action, just,
okay.
The right way, when and if we can get to this. I just want to understand your thinking about how you would want to do it if it were done in steps.
Just you're saying the living shoreline, and in theory, whatever stormwater design that we anticipate for the end of the Normandy would be done at the same time. In association with whatever we decide to do with the stone path or the sidewalk and the curbing there as well. Probably package everything into one type of bid and kind of go out that way. Is that what you're asking?
No, I mean, that makes sense. You don't want to do, I think what I was asking is, you don't want to do one piece without doing the others.
No, yeah, they'd have to be done kind of in the same fashion. Let me see.
And the pieces are a rain garden. Are you, what's the pathway sidewalk that you were just talking about? Do we need sidewalk down there?
There's right now there's existing quarry dust or stone dust. And then we have the mulch beds associated with some of the plantings. And what tends to happen is that during any significant rainfall, all that material just ends up just washing away. that stone dust is probably not appropriate for the public right of way there. Internal to the park is probably okay, but along the curb and stuff, it just doesn't work. We don't have a substantial curb there. It's kind of broken and piecemeal, whatever. So what ends up happening, people just park over there on top of it and it just washes out. So there would have to be, I think, in my opinion, some type of, sidewalk for a portion of the public right of way internal to the actual site of the Normandy. You could have the stone trails and, just similar to what's on, the Fairhaven Fields or something like that. But along the public right of way, I think for ADA access and and to also provide that gutter flow, I think curb and sidewalk would be appropriate there.
I'm pretty sure that's in the micro projects scope of work, Tracy.
For the Normandy?
Yes.
So
Right.
how do you reconcile the role of the rain garden with the curbing?
So
Isn't
I
curbing-
think in the, let me see if I could pull up that design.
Is it in the Stevens thing?
No, the Stevens thing was the Literal Society. This was the Rutgers plan that talked about. So if you take a look here, what the Rutgers site plan, what they were talking about was to, how the road goes the existing road goes all the way up to here. I don't know if you can see it on the page,
I do
this
see-
fine line.
Okay,
So what they were talking about is actually ending the road just past the Yacht Works entrance. So up closer. So you'd have this additional impervious coverage that would be removed, and that would be incorporated into the rain garden and also into the project site.
okay. So
You know,
they
the
gotta-
rain garden can't go all the way down at the end because there's also the natural tides and the flooding associated with it. So it has to be at an elevation of like 11 or 12 based on the floodplain associated with the Navesink River. So they were actually vacating the public right of way, incorporating that whole part of the Normandy Avenue into the park and into the rain garden design, and then kind of overlapping into the park itself. So the curbing and the sidewalk would just kind of be for a portion of it. Then all this other impervious area would be removed, and that would be turned into this rain garden area. Now the design and the actual location can be manipulated or changed based on what we have there now, but that was just their conceptual idea.
Do
that
you
make sense?
like it? Does it make sense to you?
Oh yeah, I think it would accomplish
Mm-hmm.
it would accomplish two things. It would help with the runoff coming down to Normandy. It would remove impervious coverage down there. It would still provide access to the public via, a pathway or something. And then you'd have more of this rain garden area, which would obviously be watered by the stormwater.
Yeah,
So it's a good concept. The details, and the exact locations and stuff would still have to be worked out, but in general, it makes sense.
okay.
know.
Yeah,
So just as you see, this is the Monmouth County GIS, which kind of takes some of the FEMA floodplain associated with it. And if we zoom into here it is. This is the
everything
Yacht
in
Works.
is in the new,
So this is the Yacht Works, Fairhaven Docks over here, and then this is the Normandy property. So you can see where the blue is the 100-year floodplain, and this is the 500-year floodplain. And if you zoom in with what Rutgers and the engineering part of it, the design part of it was to locate that rain garden, up higher here where the entrance of the Yacht Works is out of the 100-year floodplain. It would still be probably in the 500-year floodplain, but
yeah,
ultimately you can't design for that as well. And it wouldn't be that big of a deal. It's not like a hospital or something that needed to be out of the 500-year floodplain. But that's generally the area that we were talking about there.
Okay. Can I ask some questions?
Yeah, sure.
That Rutgers report, how many properties were in the sort of suggested target list?
I believe there was either 12 or 13 sites that they looked at. You know, they took a canvas of the community and, looked at various areas or potential areas where they thought they could have some impact or some type of impact we could have by implementing the green infrastructure.
And that 25 acres, that had to do with the total of the impact associated with those 13 properties?
That's the total, that was the total acreage of impervious coverage with those
Associated
13
with the
properties.
Okay. And what would be the, how do you measure the actual, I mean, what is the number by which you measure the improvement?
So what they did is they looked at each one of those sites, and for example, for the Acme, if you put a bioretention system in that was 940 square feet, that's 0.2 acres, that would, depending on the soil type, you would have this much of recharge potential, this much TSS removal. So they based their impact on the size of the green infrastructure installed or proposed. So like pervious pavement for the Boynton site would be like almost 6,000 square feet.
But is there a way like to, is there some sort of number that quantifies how much is going to be retained and perked and, go for recharging the groundwater table instead of into the river? Do we know that number?
Well, there's different things going on. There's this recharge potential, million gallons per year for each one of those different sites.
The current,
what's that?
What's the million? Forgive me, I have a hard time seeing the little numbers, but
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I think it's my eyes, because of the progressive lenses with Zoom, it's a whole thing, but, oh, thank you. Thank you.
So here, this is what they were talking about. For example, if you did pervious pavements at Acme, that was like 36,000 square feet or 0.84 acres, the potential recharge, 1 million gallons per year would be this. So, they did some analytical, and then again, this is only conceptual. They make certain assumptions. There's certain things that kind of have to come into play. But they talk about, when you put all these things together, yeah, of course it has an impact. The TSS puts pollution removal, pounds per year, they talk about your maximum volume reduction in gallons per storm, the peak reduction of, cubic feet per second, the speed and the volume of water, the size, also at that time, they estimated a potential cost associated with those different infrastructure improvements.
The cost of making the improvements?
Of installing it construction wise, yeah.
Okay. And their analysis, sorry, with the 1 million gallons a year, their analysis is established that those 13 properties are shedding or contributing to 1 million gallons of stormwater into the Navasink annually. Is that what
They're saying that if you install a bioretention system, that water is getting infiltrated into the ground and not directly flowing to the Navasink within, an hour or 2 hours or whatever, that it has time to infiltrate into the ground and go into the aquifer, or then eventually it would mitigate, because obviously it still travels when it's in the aquifer. It's just a slower process.
And it gets filtered.
Correct.
So I didn't ask my question very well. The number in red.
That's the total that they came up with for the entire 13 projects.
Okay.
That's just a cumulative number if all those things were implemented. It's an order of magnitude, but it kind of gives you a scope of how all those things, if you aggregated all those things, that would be the potential impact.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I jump in real quick, Nick? Because you kind of touched on this, how we kind of missed the opportunity with the redevelopment of the Acme. Teresa, maybe this is more of your question, or maybe this was discussed at the meeting that I didn't make, because I think it was about the floodplain management. So like going forward, Boynton was brought up. If they do plan to do like a redevelopment, there's like more teeth in our ordinance now, right? More higher
Yeah.
Yes, I think,
standard. So going forward, we
and
would,
Acme did make some, they did make some concessions when they went to the planning board. They did put some.
Yeah,
um,
they did do some dry wells. They helped, prior to Acme being developed, redeveloped, we had an issue of flooding on Smith Street and Colonial Court and what have you. So at that time, the entire roof drainage from the shopping center would discharge right into Colonial Court and to Smith Street. And as part of the board application, they did put in some dry wells at the corner of Foreman and Smith Street to help with some of that drainage problem. There's always more that we can do, but yeah, it's a give and take for the development process. Obviously a lot of the development that goes on in Fairhaven does not get classified as a major development. That's the biggest problem. It's all kind of smaller, disturbances and smaller developments. If we're out in Howell or out in Jackson or Lakewood or something like that, and you're developing a strip mall or doing a subdivision for, multifamily or for single family development, obviously stormwater kicks in. That's the number one thing that you do from day one of your due diligence, is figure out how much land you have to put aside for stormwater. Obviously here in Fairhaven, everything is built out, and it's built out in residential type standards. What we do is from a zoning and from an engineering review for the single family developments, is that any new development, new house that goes up, we ask them, or we require them to put in a dry well for the garage and for the house. So in other words, they're taking all that clean water that's coming off the roof and they're putting it into the dry well, which has a chance to infiltrate. It doesn't just discharge onto the driveway, discharge into the roadway, and discharge into the municipal stormwater system. So over the years, if you think about it, we've done probably 24 houses a year. It has an impact.
totally. Thanks. Tracy, do you have any update? I know Ralph was trying to do a rain garden at Nativity, and then I think it got kicked back. Maybe that was
I think
because it
I
was on the
mentioned that
county road
before.
or
They
something.
were looking into that, but they had to deal with, I think, discharge point was the county, so they had to make sure that they met all the county rules for discharging there. So I don't know what happened with that, but I think that's one of the sites that was identified. This was the case study, just to kind of circle back onto the Rutgers and to Littoral Society and the Living Shoreline at the Normandy. This was the I don't want to say the brochure or whatever, or the pamphlet, the one-page fact sheet that they put out when we initially started the project, and what we were anticipating for the proposed beach fill and the area at the slope of the Normandy there. And that was the project that Stevens Institute was helping us with, and they did the more of the design aspect. And again, this was never going to have a huge impact. It's not like the Army Corps of Engineers who are doing, beach replenishment from, Seabright, Monmouth Beach, all the way to Sandy Hook or something, and, creating a feeder beach and the literal drift, kind of moving sand and everything. This was kind of a small little pet project that was more of a demonstration project, to kind of show more of a teaching tool and instead of an engineering design. So if I had to rate the engineering design from 1 to 10, the engineering value of this is probably like a 2-3. but the public awareness and the impact, you know, is probably more like an 8, 9 type of thing, because it's part of a public park system. You would have the exposure, and it would have that type of impact. And that kind of ties into what we were talking about with the Environmental Commission and the Mayor and Council with regard to the dock and the outfall protection, or the outfall netting associated with it. I'm not sure if everybody saw that, but I could share this. So at the end of Fairhaven Dock, we have the benches and we have this outfall. Again, this is not a huge drainage area. It's basically taking drainage from, you know, Clay Street and, you know, maybe a little bit further, maybe up some of it from Fairhaven Road that flows sheet flow. But there's only really 2 inlets at the bottom here, and then it discharges into the Navasink. And what Brian and what we were talking about is having like a sock that attaches to the end of this pipe to help collect some of the you know, the floatables or some of the nuisance kind of stuff that pollutes into the Navasink. And you know, we prepared a quote sheet with Stormex, and you know, this is an example that they were talking about of the clamp and the netting that goes on the end.
It's not up on the screen, but we do know what you're talking about, I think. Because
It's not
I tried to
screen sharing
update
pause.
council a couple meetings.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure.
It's a
Can you see
very
it now?
Yep.
There you go.
So that's the screening or the netting associated with it. So, you know, as part of the design, again, from an engineering value, it probably has an impact of like, you know, 3. But again, from the awareness and from the public outreach standpoint, it probably has more of a 8, 9 kind of impact. And then what we were talking about was, you know, we'd monitor it, and the DPW would take off the netting and then clean it out, or see how much is collected in there, and kind of monitor. We talked about the other outfalls around town, but as of right now, those other sites are either not suitable or kind of hidden away that wouldn't have the same impact. So we're kind of just waiting and seeing if it makes sense to move forward with it, or just to keep this as the one demonstration project.
I believe as a pilot project, it could be pretty instructive, because not everyone, more and more people get it, but not everyone makes the connection about what's in the road and what goes in the catchments and what's happening underneath. So it could be a great way to start to report those findings to the community. I could see something like that every now and then when the net comes off to get emptied. It could be photographed and shared so that residents can see.
Yeah, definitely. Or right now there's another kind of billboard or kiosk that shows what happened during Sandy. There could be something similar from a stormwater standpoint, so you know that what the project is, what the goal is, and what we're trying to solve. And it could be coordinated and educated through the school system. That's part of the stormwater education outreach program. That's also kind of part of our MS4 permit.
Okay.
I just want to tell you that Josh and I have an interview at 5:15, a personnel interview. So we have a hard stop, like 5:05 on this meeting, so we can get prepped for that one.
I'm wondering, Teresa and Nick, if it might be a good idea for Nick to come to an environmental commission meeting and help them understand the kind of the components or the de Normandy conditions and what's envisioned, and so they can wrap their heads around it. Because I think there's a little bit of the tendency is to, living shoreline is sort of exciting and people, but it's not the only piece. And I'm pretty sure they don't, some men understand it, but from the conversations, I'm the liaison, so I hear them discuss it and I don't think that they fully understand. I mean, I didn't, and I'm happy that you were here today. So I'm just going to suggest, I don't know if your schedule allows for it, but it might take 30 minutes. It could be very instructive for the Environmental Commission. So it's just-
I'm actually taping this, Tracy. I didn't catch the beginning, but I don't even have trouble, sharing the link with them to at least look at it to give them a preview.
Great
If that
idea.
would be helpful.
Great idea.
Yeah, that's fine. You could share this stuff. It's all available. And I'd
Nick,
be happy to kind of help outline it or administer it or what have you.
thank you.
From
Nick-
the,
Oh, sorry. May I ask a question?
sure.
Since we acquired, in the time since we've acquired that property, have we been monitoring any loss of sort of that beach area? Has there been loss? Is it significant?
In my opinion, it doesn't appear to have eroded or scoured away.
Okay,
I know the Yacht Works is doing some maintenance dredging and some piles are being removed and they're reconfiguring some stuff.
okay,
Generally speaking, we really haven't had any nor'easters that, scoured or scoured or pulled things out from there. The actual slope that has the vegetation on it, we maintain that. We kind of, chop it down every once in a while so that we provide that visual vista. We maintain that visual vista, but we don't actually disturb any of the roots or the trees or what have you. And that's been pretty steady. We haven't seen any erosion there. We really haven't had any storms that could affect that. So generally speaking, I think it's been pretty stable since we did all the improvements there and since we took down the house and since Sandy, basically.
And then in terms of design or engineering or drawings, who is the right professional and what would the work product need to be in order for that to go out to bid?
I think we would just have to better define, the project in order to understand what permits are required. I know the Literal Society had done some of that for us. So some of it is already done, but to incorporate some of the additional stormwater aspect of things or the rain garden associated with that is a different part of the scope that wasn't originally intended for the Literal Society. So it's a combination of defining what the goals are and what the scope is, and then we can determine what professionals are required to do that. Because there is a DEP permit part of this as well that we would have to address.
We have a permit or no, not yet?
We had been working to submit to the DEP with the Literal Society for the living shoreline.
They were
And-
also waiting on the denormity settlement because it had to be, it was part of a management agreement that we would have to get the permits under, and they wanted to file, DEP didn't want to touch anything there until they were sure what how much of it was riparian for the borough and how much of it
Right.
would be covered in a management agreement.
Who owned what?
That's all happened now, right? Okay, so we're starting, like, we're in the beginning of a new time. Okay. I mean, is this I've been exposed to some of this stuff in my, in my work as a landscape architect, mostly as a student, because I never participated in any of these in my professional life, design and installation, but is this a landscape architect? In your opinion?
No, it's more of a ecological, environmental design. The actual landscape component of it is very small. We're not really dealing with much with regard to, plantings on the shoreline. It was really just the you know, establishing the elevations for the beach fill, establishing either the rocks or the oyster bags, to kind of maintain
just-
some of the literal drift or sand. And then obviously the rain garden is separate, you know, there's a landscape component associated with that, but that's kind of, you know, secondary to the stormwater part of it.
I mean, it feels like it could be bundled. I know we're not, this is not critical at this point, but are you talking about an environmental engineer?
Yeah, for the permitting aspect of things, yes.
How about for the design?
They do we talking about the engineering design?
So the living shoreline and the rain garden,
Correct.
and we have,
From my perspective, those are both engineering projects, then either the landscape or the environmental or kind of the secondary portion of because first you have to accomplish the engineering goals, which is, you know, stormwater and slope stabilization and beach fill. And then the secondary is to make it pretty, which is the landscape architect or the environmental aspect of that.
okay, I get your point of view on it.
Because you have to get the DEP permits, and DEP permits are engineering, you know, they have to be signed and sealed by an engineer per
Yeah.
se. And meet the certain
So-
criterias.
But it's not an in-house thing, right? This is,
No, we don't have the capacity to work on that.
okay.
Right
that's-
now.
Was my assumption. I just wanted to check. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah,
I mean, we don't have the capacity in terms of professional, I understand time constraints, but has to do with specialty, right?
yeah, there's various different components that will be required, that, you know, the mapping, the GIS portion of it, the permitting aspect, all the putting together the reports. We're not set up that way.
Okay. This was really helpful.
Yeah, just as a quick, I know we have like 5 minutes left here. Obviously, you know, floodplain management is kind of after Sandy has taken a real front seat to a lot of beach communities, and with the state and federal regulations with regard to resiliency and climate change strategies, they've kind of changed all the rules, made it more of a local issue instead of a county or a state issue. Obviously, the state still has implications, but just even this past week, you know, they issued this 154-page report on New Jersey Floodplain Administrator's Guidebook, which I haven't even had a chance to look at, but it's in combination with FEMA and the DEP, which talks
Wow.
about all the requirements, you know, the new roles, the new requirements associated with floodplain management, and everything that's coming and that has to be done associated with it.
This is all
Um,
on you too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's another thing that we need to address. We're lucky, but we're lucky, but we still have to do it. You know, we don't have as
Yeah.
much of an area to cover, or it doesn't impact as many, you know, residential or commercial properties, but, you know, we still have to do the same amount of work, even though it doesn't impact as the same amount of people. And then I think we'll work in the future with Betty Ann to put some of the stuff on the website, but this is like reduce your flood risk. These are FEMA websites where they have special videos. We talk about, you know, what property owners can do. I know there was some questions at recent meetings. Is it going to affect my property, or does it not affect my property? You know, they can watch the videos, they can talk to, they can put in their address and see how it impacts, if they have flood insurance, if they don't have flood insurance, if they want flood insurance, how close they are to the floodplain. So
So
that's
you're
something
thinking
that we'll
about
work with.
putting a link, putting the link for this website out so folks can learn what they want, given their individual circumstances.
Correct. So like right now we have our MS4 stormwater permit requires us to have it on our Fairhaven website. So we'll have something
Okay.
similar to this a link to this type of website on our Fairhaven site, so they could see, you know, if they have questions, people, you know, Betty Ann, or people can direct them to our website and they could look at the videos and things like that to, you know, obviously to help them understand it, or we can, you know, help them as well through the process.
Oh, wow, yeah.
All right. Hey, guys, I gotta jump. Nick, thanks for this. Can you circulate that PowerPoint? I'll just be interested to look at that Rutgers
Yeah, no, I'll send out the links.
presentation again.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Have a
All
good
right,
one.
no problem.
Right.
Like,
And then this was the last thing on, I know you had a question about 51 Grange. So this is our ordinance, section 23.3, which talks about drains and sump pump
Oh, I did.
discharges.
Yes, thanks.
So we have this, you know, basically it says that no person will discharge roof drains, any types of sump pump drains into the public right of way. The hard part is that there's a lot of legacy ones out there. So like the wintertime, some pumps are discharging it, discharge onto the road, they ice over. As DPW, we got to go out there and salt it and what have you. But the problem is that when we do, you know, road projects, a lot of that stuff is not picked up ahead of time because we don't know about it. It's either hidden or somehow we don't necessarily uncover it until after the fact. Like I was saying, with new construction, it's easy. We make them, you know, put in the dry wells, or if they're going to discharge, they have a pop-up drain that's far enough away from the right of way so it discharges onto the grass, has a chance to infiltrate or what have you. But the hard problem, it's not just here, it's everywhere. It's those old legacy
Yeah.
sump pumps or issues that we need to address.
So when, like, say, for example, on Hance, we're talking about Hance, 51 Hance, right?
Yeah, not Grange, I'm sorry.
Or-
Yep.
That's all right. I knew what you meant. So in that instance, when you know there's that condition and you know that there's going to be road work, what do we as a community do?
So we talk to the homeowner and we see if we can, you know, cut that back so that it's somewhere upstream on their property. And, you know, either put up ask them, or we put up a pop-up drain so it discharges into their lawn area instead of directly into the public right of way. Or, you know,
Do we
into
teach
the,
them about, you know, a simple retention basin if they can't afford, you know, a major detention basin, maybe just, I mean, some people don't know what to do, right?
no, understood. And that's where we're saying, like, the cheapest and the way we've been trying to deal with it on it's a case by case basis, but something like this one on 51 Hance, you know, they have enough property there where we could, you know, put up a pop-up drain, you know, somewhere in their property, and it would just pop up and flow over land into that, into the grass area and infiltrate there. You know,
Don't they
some of the
have
other
a-
properties in the R5 zone, they don't have that luxury.
Yeah. So what is happening, you know, on River Road, right? This is like a completely specific, and I know you're going to need to go, Teresa, but what's happening, Nick, from a stormwater management standpoint on River Road? What's the number of Michael DiMichelli's house on River Road, where the street fills with water and it comes up on the front yards right there, like across from Ruth Blazer's place? Do you know what I'm
So,
talking about?
yeah, I know what you're talking about. So that we had talked to the county. The county ended up coming out and fixing the stormwater pipe crossing River Road. It had collapsed.
Ah,
So it was clogged and wasn't necessarily draining into the stormwater system.
okay.
So that should be mitigated and fixed. Obviously, we had talked to the county a while ago. They had TV'd it, said it was okay. It's the capacity of the pipe is smaller. It's shallow and small. We had problems in the past there because the leaves and stuff would accumulate in the gutter and would block up that drain. So our DPW guys, we would have to go out there and kind of, you know, I want to say plunger it, but basically kind of plunger it to make it flow. So hopefully the combination of reestablishing and fixing that pipe and the new roads and the gutter flow will kind of alleviate that issue at that location.
And did they put in the same size pipe under the road there?
They didn't actually
You said it caved, right?
it caved at the inlet structure,
Okay.
not necessarily like in the middle of the pipe, but like towards
Uh-huh.
the actual structure itself. It was old bricks, and bricks fell in and moved out. So they were to clean it out and recreate that inlet structure is what I was told. I didn't actually.
Yeah, let me just jump in because I asked Rich. He intimated to me that it was fixed in a better situation, but I think he said it was 2 foot pipe. Would that be accurate, Nick?
A 24-inch pipe.
That's what I would guess, and he was advocating for, he thought maybe they should put a 3 foot pipe in there. It made it sound like they fixed the old pipe with a pipe that he didn't think was quite as big, but it's going to be a lot better than it was before. That's what I heard.
Okay.
Well, 2 feet is big.
Yeah, that sounds, it's really shallow there, so I don't know if that would fit there, but I could follow up with Rich or the county. I wasn't part of that repair per se.
And I could have misunderstood him, but Tracy, that's what I got out of it was
Okay.
they fixed it. It's much better than it was. Rich thought maybe they could have went for the bigger pipe, and I thought he said that was 3 feet, but I'm not sure.
Okay, thanks, Josh, thanks. So we can hope to not see any more flooding there. That's the expectation, right? That's the reasonable expectation.
That's what I understood from Rich, that he thought it would alleviate the situation in the short term. Yep.
Yeah,
And then my
the
last question,
county took the lead with that, so.
okay. Which is appropriate, that's, yeah. And given your understanding, my last question on this specific issue is, did the property, did Kevin Q's, Colonial Court thing, is that contributing? Or is the stormwater being contained as part of the approvals for that subdivision Colonial Court project?
That project is still ongoing.